idea that was in there. But I want to read these over you almost as a prayer and a vision of what life is like when we are leading from a soul healthy place. I'll read over them in a minute, but as we were talking at the end of my session yesterday, and the question was, how do you say no to the driven when there's so much work to be done? How do we say no? And I want you to be thinking about, this is what helps us say no, is we can think of ourselves leading from health. And this is the kind of leader we all want to follow. This is the kind of leader I promise you want to be. So let's read through these together. I mean, you don't have to say them out loud, but I want you to hear these. People who lead from soul health are peace-filled in crises as well as in calm times. And during crises, they do not revert to authoritarian or avoidance behaviors. They know intimately what it means to be part of or create community. They do not depend on themselves for the vision of the organization. That can be kind of contrarian in some of our leadership contexts. They can give power away, and I'm also praying this over you, that you would be able to give power away without feeling a loss of self, that you're connected intimately with God, that you would not project your pain or addiction on others. Leaders like this do not burn out or succumb to stress. Could we believe that that would be possible? Is it inevitable that after a certain amount of time in ministry, we're just weary and there's no way around it? Leaders who lead from a healthy soul practice integrity, reflection, and collaboration. They have a strong sense of humor and creativity. They are courageous, and above all, they are life-giving. Guys, that's what helps you say no. You want to be that kind of leader, right? I do. So what of value can come from the seasons of burnout? I know from the story of the fires that I shared with you yesterday, and then the story of my own internal collapse when we were church planting. And by the way, that happened when I was not yet 30 years old. It was my resolve to care for the soul has come out of deep brokenness and into a season of, yes, I had young kids, yes, I was working full time, yes, sometimes I was in a variety of different contexts, but I don't care what season of life you're in, the availability of deep life with God is present. It is not only available to the people in certain seasons who have tons of time to do nothing. This has to be just as available to the single mom who's working 3 jobs and using public transportation to get where, trying to hold it all together. This way of life is available to her. It's available to an executive who's running multiple companies at the same time on a global scale. It's available to pastors who are having to work a job while they're planting a church, leaders of networks, global leaders. If this isn't available to everyone, then it's not real. This does not depend on a way of life that allows you to always have circumstantial ease. And we have to get this clear in our heads. It's not some version out there someday. This is us here now, everyone. This is the invitation of God. So what if the hardships in our life, or I can speak in my life, what if those seasons of burnout could actually light a path to flourishing, to that vision of shalom, to that idea that all could be well? And that is part of the journey from me out of my burnout many years ago and out of the fires in our community over the last few years. And a fun little book got created out of it called Ignite Your Soul. And in it, in addition to explaining the story, both of the church planting days and as well as the fires, I weave together the stories and then lay up 6 core practices that might seem a little unusual. And those are some of the things, we're gonna not go all through 6 of them in our time today, but I wanna highlight a few of them. and the ones that are with asterisks. But just to be clear, the practices that are available to everyone everywhere include these: the practice of learning to pay attention, the practice of participation. How are we participating with God in what God is doing in our world? That's a whole separate thing. How are we practicing delight, which you may have never thought about, like might be an important part of your spiritual life with God? The practice of humility, which, again, we don't often think of it as a practice, but a lot of the times when humility is spoken of in Scripture, it's humble yourselves, choose a different seat at the table. It is an active choice, and we practice humility. Silence is one of the most important practices in my journey, very unexpectedly so, and then rest. Very important. So can we go quickly to the practicing attention? Often when people say to me, like, Mindy, you've convinced me I should probably take care of my soul. I want to live out of those unforced rhythms of grace. What's the one thing I need to do? And if that was you yesterday wondering what's the one thing, this is often my answer. You need a page, a person, and a plan. And what they all have in common is they help us pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on in our own hearts and souls. Pay attention to what's going on around us. Pay attention to where is God at work and how are we joining him. So we'll go through what each of these is. The page is the invitation to reflection. This is the practice of journaling. That same author, Janet Hagberg, who wrote that list of the practice of the characteristics of those who lead from a healthy soul, she had a whole chapter in her book on how our leadership influence is actually capped at our capacity for self-reflection. This is a big idea, guys. Your willingness to sit down in the pages of a journal, actually handwriting is a very beneficial thing for your brain and body, all those things. That is not a waste of time. Even if it's running between meetings, all you can do is pull out a piece of paper and try to grab what's going on in your head and write it down. It doesn't need to be for ages and ages, every day in the same chair. If your life allows that, great. But choosing to put into physical written words what is actually banging around in your head is vital to your influence. If you do not have the capacity for self-reflection, you will be capped out. You can keep trying to do all your strategies, but it's an interior job. You've got to be willing to look inside. Why am I doing these things? Why is that important to me? Why? All those good questions come from this place of reflection. So the page, person, and a plan, the page is the invitation to reflection. Helps us pay attention. Second thing is the connection, and this is a vital role of this whole organization that's doing this massive recalibration. Guys, we need other people who are with us in this journey. This is vital. You need each other. You need cohorts. You need friendships. You need spiritual mothers and fathers. You need these kinds of people in your life. You can read the notes of what's going on here, but the person is really the invitation to connection. And there's a certain way that the Holy Spirit of the living God is going to move in and shape and reshape who you are. That's the spiritual formation side. Reshape who you are at the core of your being through these ordinary relationships. I believe this is one of the biggest areas where God's going to breathe new life. But in order to get there, one of the most important things is we've got to let go of our comparison and competition. Okay, I heard somebody mentioning this yesterday, and there was a lot of resonance in the room. So I brought, from my hotel room, a book that I've been reading lately. If you love really thick theology, this is Miroslav Volf, who's up at Yale. A recent, I think, new book called The Cost of Ambition. Can you see this? The subtitle is How Striving to Be Better Than Others Makes Us Worse. I am loving this. And what we must understand is if every time you're getting together with someone else, there's a constant internal jockeying for supremacy and superiority, and we cloak it in all the crazy stuff, guys. Superiority lurks very deep in a human nature, but I think that is something that we're starting to name, because you cannot be for someone else and at the same time constantly seeing if you're a little bit better or feeling terrible if you're a little worse. All of that it's immaterial to a relationship. Competition kills community. Kills it. Absolutely kills it, and it is fake community if you think you're having breakfast with all your friends, but in the end you're still kind of one-upping or one-downing. We have got to push into this very strongly if we're going to get to a point where the Spirit of the living God is the story that we're all telling, and out of mutual love and regard for one another, we can co-labor. We got to kill it. We got to kill it. How striving for others or to be better than others makes us worse. Great author, great book. Okay, so enough. Are we good? Are we good on this? All right. Page person, and the plan is the invitation to connection. Nothing of value is going to happen in our lives. Anything that matters warrants a plan. You probably have a ministry plan, you probably have a financial plan, you might have a workout and nutrition plan. Anything that matters we're not just going to arrive to a better situation by floating downstream. And it might be that one of the most important things you could do is start putting together a plan for the well-being of your soul. And this is where the realities of a very hard life start to come into focus, because if your kids get up at 5:30 in the morning and you have responsibilities to 3 different jobs, you very well better have a plan of how you're going to connect with God in creative and real ways in the midst of that very demanding life, because it will not happen just floating downstream. It's not impossible, it just requires some intentionality. All right, so page person and a plan, you get that idea. All right, can we do a few more? All right, practicing delight. This is going to be really quick. I want you to think about what is something, write down in your notes, like, I don't know, 4 different things that make you smile, that are uniquely you. It's a color, it's a texture, it's a view, it's a person, it's a sport, it's an activity. What brings you delight? Write them all down, or at least a few. Anybody have some? What gives you delight? A great conversation that you had with your family last night. Beautiful. What's another one? Grandchildren. Love it. Big fan. Music. Beautiful. Dancing in the kitchen, I heard people say. There's so many things. Guys, sometimes we get so serious and all the things. You are wired for delight. And here's the thing I want us to imagine. If we all went around and read our lists, there would likely be no 2 that are the same in the entire room. The things that make you experience delight are uniquely you, and I believe that God experiences delight in seeing you delight in those things. It's kind of meta, I know, but it's true. So the bigger question is, how can you intend for delight in your life? How can that become a practice that you take just as seriously as time in the Word, as time in prayer? Guys, we can enjoy this life that God has given us. There's beautiful things in this world. If we get so starstruck by everything that's terrible and wrong and needs to be fixed, and there is plenty that is terrible and wrong and needs to be fixed, but it coexists with things that are beautiful and creative and fun. So, practicing delight might be a next step for you. The last one I want to focus on during our time this morning is this practice of silence. I think of it as silent prayer. And there's some free resources about all this stuff on our